Well, welcome everyone to PulsED. We are going to discuss marketing today. We have a good crowd here in the office as well as online. I want to talk a little bit about PulsED. It is cooperation actually with the USDA Risk Management Agency and the USADRY Pea and Lentil Council. Today we're going to focus on marketing. In our meeting on the 22nd or the 23rd, we had a meeting on crop insurance. All of these are going to be available online, so you can view them really at any time. I want to talk a little bit about the pulse industry and the importance, as we kick off this marketing section, about the importance of raising quality products for our market development efforts. So, you know, this is a really a changing industry, right? 1995. This was the look at peas, lentils, and chickpeas and dry beans in the United States. Notice that peas, lentils, and chickpeas was concentrated in 1995 in the Pacific Northwest, where we are right now and where our office and headquarters are located. In 2016, this is what the map looks like. So we went from about 2.4 million acres of these crops to 3.8 million acres, almost 4 million acres, and perhaps 4 million acres in this coming year. So now I'm going to turn the podium over to my vice president, or our vice president of marketing, Pete Klaiber. He's going to walk through the understanding of pulse crop markets. Pete's been with us since 1999. And so he's an old hand around here. He runs and really focuses on all of our marketing programs, both international and domestic. So, Pete, the floor is yours.
Understanding pulse crop markets, we're going to take a little bit of a look at the overall marketing effort we do and how that affects the price. And then we're going to come back down and talk to some of our friends from the growing sector as to how they make certain decisions on the marketing side. So here's a little introduction as to looking at our markets, but we're reversing it instead of from field to fork. This will take you back from fork all the way back to the beginning.
Let me tell you a little story of how a dry pea, lentil, or chickpea gets from fork to field. Yeah, you heard me right. This is India. India loves pulses. In fact, currently about 70% of the USA cool season pulse crops are exported overseas, and India is our #1 importer. So how did this nutritional powerhouse of a field crop end up in this happy child's tummy? Let's back up. These Indian consumers purchased their pulses at the local market. The local merchant bought them from a wholesaler. The wholesaler purchased them from an Indian pulse importer. The importer bought them from a U.S. shipper. The U.S. shipper arranged for the pulse shipment to be loaded into containers that were delivered to India by an ocean-going ship. To get to port and onto the ship, the pulse shipment moved by truck or train, going into containers at a processing plant or a port-side transloading facility. But before all that can happen, the pulses have to get from your field into storage, be sold to the first purchaser, and move through the processing line. And before all that can happen, you have to plant the pulse varieties that will get you a price that makes it worthwhile to put pulse seeds into the ground at planting time and worthwhile to harvest them at harvest time. Any questions?
What we're really talking about as an industry is moving from the field and creating a product that has acceptability for the end user. And that's a step that includes the grower, the processor, the exporter, the service industries that get that product delivered on time. It's an entire package if we're going to be successful. This is a very, very busy graph, but what I want you to take away from it, and I won't spend too much time on it, is the fact that our production has generally been trending up. You'll see a couple of those bars. The vertical bars are our production, and across the lines are prices. And what you'll see here overall is that production went up. We had a couple of tough years, especially 2011, weather-related. People wanted to grow pulses, but they weren't, we just didn't get the production that we hoped for because of weather. But other than that, generally an upward trend. The yellow line shows pea prices, which have stayed quite steady despite the fact that production has increased. And on the other hand, you'll see that both lentils, the red line, and chickpeas, the blue line, have trended upward even though production has gone up. So what we have is, although supply has increased, we've been able to maintain decent price levels. Peas, we certainly hope we can do a little better, and I think we will. But even going through 2016, our estimate on that is that our prices are going to continue to be relatively strong. And the way we keep those prices strong, for the most part, is through our export markets. We export about 70% of our pea production, perhaps a little bit less than that now, over 80% of our lentil production, and approximately 50% of our chickpea production. Here's a chance for you to see the people who really make this happen. We have reps in, we have 6 representatives who work in 9 regions.
Hi, my name's David McClellan.
I am Shakunda Lal.
My name is Raul Caballero.
My name is USDRY.
My name is Dee Richmond.
My name is Johanna Stobbs, and I represent the USA.DRY Pea and Lentil Council. Hi, my name is Johanna Stobbs, and I represent the USA.DRY Pea and Lentil Council in Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, Turkey, and Sub-Sahara Africa.
Hello, my name is Dee Richmond, and I work with AgriSource Company Limited in Bangkok, Thailand. We represent the USA.DRY Pea and Lentil Council in 10 Southeast Asian countries, including the major markets of Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam.
Hi, my name is USDRY, the China representative for the USA.DRY Pea and Lentil Council. I have been working for the Council to promote the U.S. peas, lentils, and chickpeas in China since 2004.
I am Shakunda Lal, your representative in India.
Hello, my name is Raul Caballero. I'm the representative for the USA.DRY Pea and Lentil Council in Mexico and Latin America.
My name's David McClellan, and I work for the USA.DRY Pea and Lentil Council since 1989 out of my office in Barcelona, and covering Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Northern Africa, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and also work into the Middle East, especially in Dubai. One of the products that was key at this time was the Pardina lentil. This had just begun to be a major crop in the Palouse, and this is a Spanish lentil variety, very popular in Spain. They weren't able to produce enough in Spain or at a price that was competitive, and they brought seed over to the United States. It worked very well in the Palouse, and so this was becoming a major second lentil to our regular lentil, which had been our primary product into Spain.
One of our most successful markets is Turkey, a country that imports U.S.DRY peas, lentils, and chickpeas. Just in the period of January through November 2016, Turkey imported more than 5,600 metric tons of U.S. lentils, more than 5,700 metric tons of chickpeas, and more than 3,000 metric tons of dry peas.
Mexico has a deficitary agriculture. We are consumers of dry beans as the Mexican staple, such as corn. However, we are not able to produce the entire need that we have for consumption on a yearly basis. So we have to import pulses from the United States and Canada.
South Africa is another success story for U.S. pulses. These peas go mostly into the canning industry, but are also sold as a dry packaged product.
The U.S. ships about 25 to 30,000 metric tons of peas, lentils, and chickpeas into Southeast Asia each year. Most of these are used for the production of fried pea snacks. Yellow and green peas are used in every country in the region to fry snack products.
China is a very important market for the U.S. peas. China imports about 800,000 metric tons of peas each year, and about 80% of these peas, they are yellow peas.
Belgium is one of the gateways into Europe, especially Eastern Europe. Belgium imported more than 3,000 metric tons of U.S. dry peas in the first 11 months of 2016, as well as lentils and chickpeas. These products then go on to countries such as Hungary and Bulgaria.
India is known for its price sensitivity, and U.S. quality is almost the highest in the world, which comes with a high price tag.
As those relationships were developed, trade missions became less important, and more of my work was focused on promotions and on promoting and helping our customers in Italy and Spain and Greece sell our U.S. lentils and chickpeas to the final consumer through trade shows, trade missions, and in-store promotions with these packagers.
Peas and lentils, although they are not a staple for Mexico, they are preferred as alternate pulses. Green lentils in Mexico are the preference. Specifically, the Eston lentil has been the preferred by the Mexican consumer and also by the importers. They relate the green color to natural and fresh, and when they look at other varieties that are more tannish, they don't like it because consumers think that the product is old.
Yellow peas in China, they are mainly used for the production of pea glass noodles and pea protein, bean paste, sprouting, and feed, and some regional and cuisines. And green peas, China buy green peas for the fried snacks, canning, and sugar peas. And the US and green peas works better in China market due to better qualities, such as the consistent size and consistent colors.
One of the most exciting trends in my markets is the growing demand for U.S. chickpeas. We know that demand is rising very quickly in the U.S. domestic market, but it's also rising in foreign markets. Turkey, for example, is desperate for chickpeas and will continue to ask for U.S. chickpeas. Imports of U.S. chickpeas to Turkey in 2016 were up by 278%.
Maybe the most unique part of what we've done in the last few years is developing a website called legumechef.com, which focuses more on talking with chefs, professional chefs and chef students, showing them the opportunities and advantages of working with legumes in general, and then the quality of U.S. legumes, which is well respected by the industry, but maybe not so well known on the hotel, restaurant, and consumer level.
So Canada has been the natural supplier with the Eston lentil. They have dominated the market. But in recent years, the United States has been increasing the production of green lentils, Eston lentils, the Viceroy, and other varieties that have been getting into our market, and that has been very positive. The importers and the consumers like these varieties, and we encourage you to plant and continue producing these type of varieties to supply Mexico.
Lentils, they are new to the China markets, and China just opened up the gates and for the lentils in 2006. And fortunately, with years of promotion and of the opening of the gates for the lentils, China starts imports in lentils in 2006.
Peas, specifically the green whole peas, are for the canning industry, and this share or market is dominated by the United States.
Fried pea snacks are an old product in Southeast Asia, and the market is relatively flat. Consequently, we've been focusing on marketing efforts in two areas. First of all is to develop new value-added products with USA peas, lentils, and chickpeas, such as new types of snacks, bakery products, instant noodles and pasta, and other pulse-based products.
We are promoting the usage of added value products such as the flour and the fractionates in order to use them to add protein and fiber to other products. Mexico suffers from obesity, so these are ideal ingredients to fortify and reformulate products within the snack and bakery industry.
Because pulses are not a staple in the diet of Southeast Asians, most consumers and many of the trade are not aware of pulses and their various uses and their properties. Now, as a result of these different types of activities that we've been carrying out, we're now starting to see not only yellow peas and green peas move into Southeast Asia, but also more lentils and more chickpeas.
According to my buyer, and they told me, and they buy red lentils and ritual lentils in 2006. They buy red lentils because the color and the relatively lower price in 2006. They buy ritual lentils because they alike and the Chinese and the Greek lentils. These lentils, they are mainly for the uses of the lentil sprouting, and also they were produced into the lentil starch to produce the lentil and jelly noodles. And China market are not very familiar with the U.S. varieties of lentils, and they still need a lot of educations.
As for overall trends in the markets I cover, it's interesting to note that buyers are increasingly looking for organic pulses. This isn't just in Northern Europe, but in many markets everywhere. And chickpeas. Keep growing chickpeas. If you grow them, we can sell them. Thank you very much.
So keep those lentils and peas for our regions in your plans. Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate letting us help you in these markets.
In spite of being price sensitive, Indian market has appreciated U.S. high quality. My request to you is that you continue and increase your volume as far as on your farms and continue your quality standard. Thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you directly. Thank you.
I hope you take a couple of things away from that. First of all, we have a great set of representatives around the world, and they are doing a wonderful job. Secondly, there's a broad range of products that the international markets desire, and we have opportunities in various areas. And thirdly, that those opportunities are continuing to grow. They're actually, I think, asking you to produce some more products so that we can sell even more internationally. And fourth, they're understanding that we have to sell these products as a quality product, that we're not going to compete on the low end, low price level. And one little comment, Lucy made reference a couple of times to 2006. She meant to say 2016, but I am not going to criticize her because my Chinese isn't that good either. Overall, in terms of marketing, we're looking, first of all, and we have been for many years, at getting a bigger piece of the pie. The U.S. is not the largest supplier in the world. We're not close. Canada produces much more in the way of peas and lentils than we do. But by differentiating U.S. product from the Canadian product and from any product from anywhere else in the world due to our quality, we've been able to get a bigger piece of the international pulse trade pie. Now we're working on making a bigger pie, and that's through new uses. That's going to happen on the domestic side and on the international side, whether it's, you've seen it go into pet food, it's going into protein, it's going into extruded snacks. These are all new uses that are going to increase and already have increased the demand for pulses globally, and out of that, we certainly expect that we will get our share. So, what are the major markets for U.S.DRY peas? The yellow circles, yellow peas. The darker circles, green peas. You can see that our biggest single market is India, taking mostly yellow peas, but also it's a decent green pea market. Mexico, a solid green pea market for us as well. And we see some in Turkey. Canada's a buyer simply because they like our quality, and when their quality is low, they love to blend U.S. pulses in and raise their grade a little bit. China, strong market, and you see some market sales into sub-Saharan Africa, which is generally food aid. I won't dwell on this. This is being recorded, and you can access this information online, but I will just note that from 2001, we exported 85,000 tons, and in 2016, we exported 529,000 tons. And that tells you something about the growing opportunities for U.S. peas in the global marketplace. India, jumping from 5,000 to 173,000, certainly helped, and China, not even on the board in 2001, stepping up for 74,000 metric tons. Lentil markets, the brown lentils have their market niche in Spain in particular, and in Western Europe in general on the Mediterranean, and India taking green lentils, especially richlies. Sub-Saharan Africa also taking lentils for food aid. Mexico, a solid buyer, and Colombia and Peru also taking richly lentils in the past few years, with increasing sales into South America. And again, lentil exports, not quite the jump that peas had, but from 80,000 metric tons back in 2001 to 220,000 tons in 2016, with India taking almost a third, or about a third, Spain also staying solid, and Canada once again helping its own grading problems by buying our product, and Mexico really coming up nicely in the past 15 years. And that's been not only the Eston, but the richly as well. They both have appeal in the Mexican market. Major markets for chickpeas. The U.S. has the biggest circle because hummus is now taking so much, but Europe, India, and again, Canada, the other major markets. About 50% of our chickpeas remain to be exported year to year in the last couple of years, Spain being the biggest taker, but India also strong. And here's a little chart that shows, again, from 34,000 tons 2001 to 59,000 tons in 2016, with Spain being the leading buyer. That number of exports actually went up for a while, but it's been coming down the last few years as more chickpeas have stayed home for the hummus production. But as we look at the future, where are the consumers? If you look at this chart, it breaks it down by country and region. You'll see the bottom, the red at the bottom is China, and that is growing. This chart goes out to 2035, the next 20 years basically, and India also growing. That's where the food demand will be growing the most. Asia also. The rest of the world, not so much. In fact, it'll be falling a little bit in the US and the European Union. So our opportunities clearly in Asia and in South Asia, which is India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, are going to be critical for our export growth. Come back to the question, what are going to happen to pulse prices? In the longer term view, I'm very positive about where prices are going, and this is the reason why. 3 shots of women in the workforce in 3 different countries. When women are working, you get a double income household. When you get a double income household, there's more money to be spent on food. Now, some folks have heard me say this before. When we get a raise, we don't spend more on food. It doesn't, we might save more, we might get a new car, whatever, but we tend not to think about increasing our expenditure on food. But in the developing world, when people make a little more money, they spend it on food. It is the leading expenditure increase that they have, as well as housing and, if they have children, education. But food is a key expenditure item as their income increases. And it also means that the woman has less time, particularly the woman. Everybody has less time. But again, looking at generally in those developing countries, it still falls to the woman to do the shopping and the food preparation. And she doesn't have as much time as she had in a traditional household setting where she could go out and do the shopping and the cooking. And so she turns to modern retailing, to supermarkets, instead of the traditional sales booths. And that means she moves from buying it loose bulk, in the case of pulses, to buying a branded packaged product. When anyone introduces a branded packaged product, what are they selling? They're selling consistent color, consistent size, consistent cooking quality. All of these things are critical. And they want to create an image for their brand that it's quality. They may have different levels of quality. They may have a low price private label brand, a medium, and a high end. But one of those where they want to give and preserve the image of a high quality product, which sells at a higher margin, they are turning to U.S. pulses because we give them the color, size, and cooking quality consistency they can't get anywhere else in the world. So this is why our opportunities are increasing around the world, whether it's the canning in South Africa or the dry packaged product in India or the snacks that are being made in China. Our households generally came up through various changes, let's say. And we all had a dial phone, and eventually now we all have cell phones. But it's not that way in the rest of the world. Much of the world has never had a dial phone, a landline phone, but they're getting cell phones now. They're leaping forward. And just as they're leaping forward in terms of their phone usage, they're leaping forward in terms of their retail sales of food products, which means they're moving right up to the hypermarket, supermarket level with packages and lots of aisles of choices. And that's going to be an opportunity for us, not only in packaging pulses, but also in the value-added products that feature pulses and can appeal to those consumers. They look at how people deal with food. The first thing is affordability. We're talking about that. Certainly price-wise, pulses compete well, and they give good value. And secondly, convenience. The value-added products in particular provide convenience, but also the shopping experience, the packaged products, that is something we deliver. Quality is also what we can deliver. The next two steps, we are not there yet in the developing markets. We are there in our domestic market efforts, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. But we really have a role in all 5 levels of food needs as the scientists have broken them down. We're looking at the U.S. pulse production as being a product rather than a commodity. We'll never compete on price, we don't think. Things would have to change significantly, let's put it that way. We haven't been competing on price for a long time. We are always competing on value, and value is the intersection of the price and the quality. And we think we win that battle hands down around the world. Now, for a country like Bangladesh, which is very price sensitive, that means we're not going to get much market penetration at this time. But a country like India, which has a growing middle class, the idea of value is growing every year, that the consumer is willing to pay a little bit more for higher quality. That's been to our benefit. So our quality, our consistency, service. By service, I mean we deliver on time. It's gotten a little harder in recent years to make that promise, but I can tell you that our processor and exporter members are working very hard to maintain service. They know that that is part of their overall sales pitch, if you will, to the international market. Communication, we are talking about understanding the needs of the various markets and letting the various markets know what we have. Our reps are key in that, in being a two-way flow of information as to what markets are looking for and what we have to offer. And lastly, in order to increase our chances of making sales into the value-added marketplace, we're talking about doing more training. We have done that both at, we've used the Northern Crops Institute at North Dakota State. We have sent experts out into the field to Mexico, to Southeast Asia, to Europe, to Turkey, in order to promote the use of pulses in value-added products in order to increase the overall demand. A couple of other things that we think about, we are looking for payers. Anyone can find a buyer in the global pulse trade. Believe me, they will find us. But finding a buyer doesn't mean that you found a payer. And one of the things we can do that helps that is our representatives can do some background work on who is in the market and who is a solid player and who might be something other. And secondly, the processors, exporters, and our reps are all looking for relationships, not just a single sale, but who is somebody that's going to want our products year after year, who's going to be looking for the quality and the reliability that we have. And thirdly, we're talking about anticipating rather than simply reacting to the market needs. We are monitoring what is happening production-wise, but also what is happening in terms of changing consumer tastes and where there may be an opportunity for U.S. pulses to find a new use in an overseas market. But it is not all smooth sailing. It never is. We have seen technical barriers, including MRL issues, maximum residue level issues. We have seen phytosanitary barriers, most particularly in India, in which the question is, do we pose a risk to the Indian pulse crop because of pests that exist in the United States? Tariffs have, to large part, gone away, but they haven't been eliminated completely. And we look toward the U.S. trade negotiations, whether that's bilateral or otherwise, to perhaps give us some additional relief in that area. And lastly, trade sanctions. We, for instance, at one time lost and continue to be banned from going into the Russian market because of trade sanctions that are currently in effect. And it's happened, of course, in the obvious example is Cuba for many, many years. Prior to the Cuba embargo, they were actually quite a good taker of U.S. lentils. So we see all of these, but everything's under negotiation, I guess, these days, and we're gonna see how that plays out in the coming couple of years. We certainly, on a case-by-case basis, are already working on the technical barriers and phytosanitary barrier issues with our friends at USDA APHIS, USDA Foreign Ag Service. We've been in touch with the EPA on some of this and the U.S. Trade Representative's Office. So we do have allies, and we're going to see if we can't maintain our access to our key markets so that we can continue to grow. One thing that we look at is the relationship of the dollar to the Canadian dollar, the U.S. dollar to the Canadian dollar. Unfortunately, we're low now. We're down at about 75 cents today. This chart comes into the end of last year, but the last few weeks haven't helped, and certainly want to see that the dollar weaken a little bit versus the Canadian dollar, and that will help our pulse exports exponentially, really. One thing in terms of looking at marketing from the grower point of view is our harvest compared to other harvests. Up there in the USA, the green is peas, the red is lentils, the yellow is chickpeas. Generally, this is when we're harvesting. You can see Canada falls right after we do, generally lagging us by a couple of weeks, sometimes more. Australia coming in at the end of the year. India, you'll note, has two harvests. They have the April-May and the October-November. The April-May is the big pulse harvest. Both crops have pulses, but the percentage or the volumes of pulses in the spring crop, spring harvest, are much larger than they are in the fall harvest. And they are headed into that right now, and we think that they're going to have a bumper crop in 2017. So you're getting some cooling of the markets now in anticipation that India supplies will be eased because of the domestic production volumes. France, still a pea producer, but less important than they used to be. And Mexico, a critical chickpea producer at the very high-end market. The high-quality Mexican chickpeas do very well in the global marketplace. They are highly prized because of the size and the color. But by the time we get to our harvest, a lot of what has been produced in Mexico has been absorbed. So we have our opportunities as well. I mentioned the bigger piece and the bigger pie, and I talked about it in terms of the global markets, but we're doing that in the domestic markets as well. We are looking for a much bigger pie in the domestic markets. It's already taking place, but there is tremendous room for additional growth. And in order to do that, you took the International Year of the Pulses, and you carry that on into the following years. The Pulse Marketing Campaign, we are looking at moving more product into use here in the U.S., in North America, both Canada and the U.S. If the Canadians would use some more up in Canada, that would be helpful for us, I think. But in any case, we all gain by this if we can get our consumption rising in North America. And in order to do that, we're looking at the 18 to 34-year-old contingent, the millennials, if you will, reaching out to them in terms of the way they communicate. whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, et cetera. So this has been the target because these are the folks that are going to create, first of all, there are a lot of them, and secondly, when we can change their eating patterns, we've really won the battle. So we've been out pushing the four pillars, if you will, of the Pulse campaign: maintaining a healthy weight, protecting against disease, nutritious diet, and helping the environment. And it is catching on. The consumption has grown. And we've done it in many, many ways. This is how we're reaching out now, whether it's a Pulse pledge, going to the trade shows, moving on the school lunch program. These have been things that have started even before the International Year of the Pulse, but the momentum is carrying them on into 2017, and we're looking beyond 2017 already into how we can increase this domestic consumption. I mentioned aisles of options before. We cannot just be in the aisle at the bottom shelf next to the rice for peas and lentils, or just canned chickpeas next to the black beans. We have to move into value-added products up and down the store, whether it's cereals, snacks, beverages. All of these have opportunities for us, and we do need to exploit them in order to succeed in the future. We might say in that product development, we have to bring together health and convenience. These are the things that not only the millennials are looking for, but virtually everyone. And what we get here that succeeds with the millennial population will have a carryover effect into the international markets. I mentioned before that kind of compression in which they move directly from no phones to cell phones, where they're moving directly from being very primitive retail operations into the hypermarket, supermarket area that can carry products like this, and that the millennials in those countries can find and appreciate as well. So it is a process. We're going to move beyond, eventually, we are going to move beyond selling it simply as a dry product into the processed product area. And when I say eventually, that will grow year by year, and the amount that's going to be cooked in the traditional way is probably going to start going down relatively soon, even in India, Pakistan, et cetera. Once again, this compression that we talked about overseas will be coming globally, even to countries that we are not selling into currently, whether that's in sub-Saharan Africa, sections of Latin America, or the Middle East. These are opportunities that will grow for us as they grow more sophisticated as well. And this pyramid that we talked about will begin to pay off all through all 5 steps, which is to say now we are moved through the quality section here in our domestic markets into ego satisfaction and finally into well-being. People are thinking about this food. How can it make me better? How can it give me a better life? We have a great story to tell to the people who have moved simply beyond quality. Here it is in the springtime. We're talking about what are the new crop bids going to be, and I just wanted to touch on the fact that we've got foreign buyers who are already talking, of course, to our processor and exporter members, domestic customers who want to lock in the supply for the coming year. I use wheat prices as a shorthand for the prices of all the commodities that compete with us for acres in our growing areas. What are the current stocks on hand compared to the demand out there, the broker's input, the exporter input, and of course, global production? All of this is coming into the mix in terms of where we see the markets going, and it ends with the new crop bids that are coming out now, trying to lock in pea, lentil, and chickpea acres here on the Palouse, in Montana, and in North Dakota. So a lot of factors going in there. It's probably at this point the good time to turn to our panelist members and find out what they think about that new crop and what experience they've had with pulses. So I'm simply going to ask you gentlemen to introduce yourselves, say where your farm is, and say what pulses you have grown, or let's start with what you've grown in the past.
My name is Howard Jones. I farm near Genesee, Idaho, in one of the most beautiful places in the world. In the past, we've raised peas, lentils, chickpeas, Austrian winter peas. Our family's been doing that for about 4 generations now.
My name is Brian Silflow, farm near Kendrick, Idaho, And we grow much of the same crops as Howard, dry peas, lentils, chickpeas, both large and small. We've raised some red lentils in the past, and I'm also fourth generation.
I'm Dave Harlow, farm in the Pullman Palouse area. We've grown peas and lentils in the past, and I'm glad you guys are still doing it, but we switched to garbs. Prices are a little better these days.
My question would be, we'll take last year or this year, depending on if you've made a decision, is how did you decide on what specific varieties you were going to plant?
On our farm, we split our production of garbanzo beans between the large diameter Sierra types and the Billy bean, the small diameter beans. We had a contract on our Billy beans, and our large diameter beans were open market. Actually, in February, we had quite a list of dark northern spring, soft white spring wheat, malting barley and feed barley, and the two varieties of the chickpeas. And when it came time to plant, we simplified that quite a bit. And so we just planted some spring wheat, some spring barley, and the two varieties of the beans.
You mentioned that you did your large chickpeas just open without a contract.
That is correct.
Do you usually do that?
I don't believe we can get a contract on large beans. What? A little bit. Okay, like for the first 500 pounds. Yes. Okay. So that's limited somewhat.
Yes.
So we farm in a pretty high rainfall area. Usually have more moisture than we care to admit on some years. So root disease pressure is a big issue for us. So oftentimes we're selecting maybe not based on the highest market price, but maybe more what might be suited for that growing season. And of course, that's always an unknown. We never know what we're going to get from moisture. But with our disease concern, we typically try to rotate, maybe not grow peas and lentils consecutively in the rotation. We typically grow wheat followed by a spring grain and then a legume, but we try to rotate that legume crop as well. So one year maybe peas, and then we typically try to follow that with a chickpea crop the next time around in the rotation, just to maybe try to eliminate or at least reduce the effect of some of those disease pressures.
We've grown peas and lentils in the past, alternating between our Pullman site and our Palouse site, but we've been consistently garbs the last 5 or 6 years, large ones in particular. We've done better than the small ones in our place.
It's interesting to see the evolution of what we do from my father's time to my time. With my father's rotation, we raised soft white wheat and dry peas, alternating years. And now we're moving more to a 3-year rotation.
Brian, have you committed to seed yet, or your plans for 2017?
Still a moving target. We've probably committed 50%. We typically don't grow all of one type of pulse. We usually have, some large chickpeas. We typically still grow a few green peas, and then we try to put some lentils in as well. But we've also grown some Austrian winter peas the past couple of years. It's been a good market with the abundant production the last couple of years. We don't have any coming into spring this year with the price decline, but we try to spread the pulse acres amongst all 3 crops, and obviously we would prefer to grow chickpeas with the way the prices are right now, or lentils with our low input costs. But we're trying to look a little more maybe long term as far as protecting ourselves with, like I said, root disease issues, and so we are definitely not growing just for the hot market, I guess.
It would be interesting to see the soil differences between like Dave's place and Brian's place and our place. I think that determines a lot of what you're choosing to plant as well.
Dave? You're going with garbs.
Going with garbs, you bet. We've been in 3-year rotations probably for 20 years plus, fall wheat, spring wheat, pulse crops. And it's, like Brian is saying, it helps with the disease complexes and just helps you grow better crops all 3 years.
Do you have any other questions here on the floor?
No-till practices, our direct seeding practices have changed what we've done quite a bit also, haven't they? It's changed our 3-year crop rotation practices, though, because we can seed a spring crop into light standing stubble and without cultivation. So that's making a difference in what we do.
So I have a question for the panel, for Howard and Brian and Dave. Could you explain what your marketing strategy would be for marketing pulses in the year, if you have one?
Well, people ask me, like, what, Howard, what's your marketing strategy? And we have home storage for the most part on our farm. And I say, well, we put our stuff in the bin and wait for the price to go down. And they give me this funny look. And as I talk to my neighbors, it seems like that's a fairly consistent plan.
I would say that we probably, most processors in the area, if markets are good, typically offer us, some type of contract, maybe on a limited production basis, maybe a percentage of the production. And so, if we can lock in some prices that are, help cover our input costs, we certainly look at that and, try to have some marketed ahead of time so that we know we've got some costs covered. But I would say we typically tend to contract more, maybe on the more niche market crops, maybe Austrian winter peas, where we're a little more the guarantee may be more certain. Maybe red lentils, I would say maybe we tend to contract a higher percentage of that crop there. Whereas maybe green peas, lentils, probably tend to market them more just cash market, open market, and but we certainly look at what's going on to our north. Canada. If it looks like they have a good growing year or good growing conditions, I would probably tend to try to market them, maybe more aggressively or sooner in the year if it looks like there's going to be a big production worldwide.
Okay.
We tend to, if I had enough storage to hold all the pulse crops we grow, I'd probably self-store them. I'm working on that. But we have enough storage for our grains, so we're more open market on that, but we're totally open market on the pulse crops, always have been. We figure we can haggle a little bit better that way. They haven't got us nailed for 500 pounds per acre. We just don't like that approach.
Oh, you'd like to have a full crop approach then?
Yep.
Okay, very good. We would too. But one of the things with our pulse crops, with our grain crops, are where they're standing, they tend to come out of the combine cleaner, and so you can store them more readily. But with our legume crops, where they're closer to the ground and there's a little more dirt, maybe some more weed seeds in there. I think our processing plants at our co-ops clean those, and that's something that we don't have capabilities to do on our farm.
Right.
And with chickpeas, if there are high moisture beans in your sample, those tend to discolor as they're stored, and so it's important to have those removed before you start to store them. And it certainly degrades our quality if that happens.
Pete, we've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
So the first one will be a follow-up to Tim for the panel. How important is your cost of production on various crops to your marketing plan and decisions? And do you calculate this annually?
Let's start at the other end and give Howard a break.
I guess I figure the cost of production after harvest, because year to year it varies. But so this year, from what I hear from all my neighbors and stuff, it's pretty tight. Almost everywhere on the Palouse, for sure. The only crop that's holding up are basically the pulses. And that's a great thing for we pulse growers. But sometimes you just gotta, if you're gonna have a loss, you just try to minimize it, period.
Well, we certainly look at cost of production every year. With pulses, I would say our costs typically don't change much. Would you guys agree? I mean, our weed control is pretty standard year to year. Obviously, with peas or lentils, maybe insecticide may be the variable from year to year. But at that cost, with the application being maybe $20, $25 an acre, it could certainly change what your revenue ends up being pretty quickly. So I'm not going to say that we don't look at it, but I think our costs don't change a huge amount in pulse production. But that being said, if we can lock in a portion of that revenue, with even if it's just on a percentage of production, with a contract, we'll certainly look to do so.
I just met with our farm lender this past week, and so he was asking very specific questions. How's this supposed to work? But the PNW Co-op, as a member of the PNW Co-op, they have a very nice program of giving us enterprise sheets that average over the Palouse what our costs of production and what our anticipated revenues might be. And that's very, very helpful. I give them a lot of credit for doing that. I'm sure that there's differences between the three places that we have here, but for the most part, our cost of production tends to be pretty consistent. Maybe our land rents between close to Pullman versus Southwick, why that land rent might be considerably different. But those are certainly things that your banker wants to know. And maybe you guys are well-to-do enough that you have enough money stashed up that you can self-finance. That would really be nice, but we're not one of those farms. I see quite a bit of smiles in the group here.
All right, so are there any other comments from the panelists? We're gearing up for an exciting year. You're going to get in the fields early this year, aren't we?
We only have 6 inches of snow on our place this morning.
You were shoveling snow before you came today. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for, especially our panelists, for participating in this morning's seminar. And I'd like to thank Pete Klaiber, our Vice President of Marketing, for the presentation. We hope that you've learned a little bit more about pulse marketing. Again, this is an exciting time in the pulse industry. We have growing markets in our export markets, and we have aggressive promotions as an industry in each of those market segments. And we also have a growing market domestically, and it's a pretty exciting time to be in this industry as our crops now enter into the ingredient market. We'd like to thank you for coming today, and that concludes the marketing segment of our PulsED for March 1st, 2017. Thanks a lot.